is being recorded.
Okay. Thank you for everyone for coming. Thank you, Melissa, for getting us started. And for everybody who has logged in, we're going to keep it an hour or less, I promise. And I see lots of familiar names in our class. So thank you again so much for coming. My name's Sarah Romesburg. I am out of the Mooresville office. And I have been in real estate for probably eight-ish years, 7, 8 years. And so today we're really going to focus on client care. And that's something that I feel like does not get talked a lot about with classes that we take and our education, obviously, that we take to get our real estate license. Client care is something that's not mentioned, but in my opinion is one of the biggest things that can create a business that is going to grow or create a business that we are only in for a short amount of time. And nobody wants that to be the case. So I'm going to go over some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years as far as client care goes in different situations. And if you have any questions or comments or stories or anything to share, I would love to hear from you guys at any point. So you can just interrupt me. I do talk fast sometimes. I also use my hands a lot. So if I'm just running my mouth, just, jump right in and I will be quiet. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. All right. So we, like I said, are going to talk about client care today. And that to me means how can we add value in every situation that we are in with our clients. We obviously think about being in a transaction with someone. So when we are actively representing a seller or a buyer in a transaction, we're going to talk about how to care in those situations, but we're also going to talk about client care, pre-transaction, post-transaction, and honestly, this is not really all about client care. It's about agent care also, and ways that we can set expectations so we do not drive ourselves crazy in the process either. So I have a little video, a little TikTok video, and this guy's great. I don't know if you've seen him on Instagram or TikTok, but he's the Broke Agent is his name, and he has a lot of funny content. So this is just some of the things that he says you learn when you're studying for your real estate license and that you learn in real estate school. Just to play on, we don't learn the things that we need to know in a real life transaction. We don't learn in real estate school. We learn, like he said, how many feet are in an acre. We learn, crazy definitions that you'll never use again. You'll learn about, just all the stuff that we do need to know. But then when it comes time to be in real life, where we are dealing with clients, we kind of have to figure it out on our own. And so the number one thing, and the reason this slide has its own, or this thing has its own slide, is setting expectations. So as an agent, the biggest thing that you can do to care for your clients and for yourself is to set expectations. You cannot fly by the seat of your pants in a transaction or when you deal with clients. You need to set expectations from the start with your clients. So before you have even shown them a home, or initially when you're meeting them the first time for a listing appointment, you need to let them know how you operate as an agent. I like to make sure my clients know when I'm available, when I'm not available, how the best way to communicate with me is. a text message is going to get responded to with me a lot quicker than a phone call might be. I've got 2 little kids at home, and we're all busy, and half the time my ringer's not even on. And I definitely answer the phone, but a text message is going to get a much quicker response. So that's something I communicate with my clients. If it's a quick question, text is best for me. You want to let them know how you communicate best. You want to let them know what your process looks like. You want to let them know the things that will be done before you start a transaction, during a transaction, after a transaction. And then the next note I have is this is a good time to ask for their expectations. So, it's something I always ask my clients, and I say, what are your expectations of me as a realtor, as your realtor? What must you see from me, or what are things that are important to you? If they say, for example, if they say communication is important to them, or daily, weekly check-ins, whatever, they're going to tell me that up front, and then it's going to create a situation where I can meet their expectations. Because if I don't know that they want every Sunday evening a recap of everything that had happened that past week, that's going to put them in a situation where they look at me like I'm not doing my job. And it might be something I didn't know that was important to them. So always ask your clients what their expectations are. A lot of times they very, don't have anything to say. They just say, I just want you to do your best for me and know that you've got my back. And most of the time it's very simple, but I can tell that clients always appreciate when you ask what they expect of me in a transaction. This is also a good time to make sure you're a good fit for each other. So, often we know our clients, especially me. I tend to only work with people I know or referrals of people I know. I don't have a lot of cold people who come in and I'm not familiar with them. But this is a good time to make sure you're a good fit for each other. If I have a client who has a very flexible schedule and wants to see property ASAP, wants to text me at 10 a.m. and they want to schedule a showing for 11 a.m. an hour later, and that's what they expect out of their agent, then I'm not the one. I'm not the one for them, and that's okay. I can't fly off the seat of my pants when it comes to showings, and maybe I can, but most of the time I can't. So if they expect an agent who is going to even do late night showings, or that's not me. And it's good to know that up front, because again, then we don't enter into a working relationship where they're disappointed or where they feel like I'm not doing my best for them, because I'm going to set my expectations and say, when you want to see a house, I will do my best to see it as soon as possible. But that's most of the time not the same day with me. So that's just kind of an expectation I set with my clients, and it's good to know that up front. So we also want to communicate our boundaries that we have and stick to them. And I know a lot of these things I'm saying sound, I don't mean them to sound rude or abrasive, but these are things. I feel like I'm an over communicator. I think my husband would probably say the same thing, but my clients, I always want them to know all the information, and they're not wondering what's going to happen in a transaction or what's going to happen next. They know it all. I just overload them with information. So when I say identify and communicate your boundaries and stick to them, I mean things like, if someone calls me at 9 o'clock at night, I'm not answering. I might very well be awake. I probably am awake at 9 o'clock at night, but I'm not talking to a client at 9 o'clock at night. The only exception would be if we were negotiating an offer, or it was a situation where I'd submitted an offer and I got a response back. Then I will communicate with a client, but I am a pretty firm 8 p.m. is the end of my communication with real estate clients for the day. I also am a very early riser. I like to get up early and do a lot of my work before my kids and my husband and everybody get up. So often I will type out all my emails for the day and do all of those things, but I'm not going to send somebody an email at 5:30 in the morning. I'm going to type it, save it as a draft, and then at 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, then I'll go back and send it. So if I tell a client, I communicate between 8 and 8, but then I send an email at 5:30 in the morning, that's not sticking to my boundaries. So if I say, between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. is when you can reach me and we can communicate, then I need to stick with that and not send them an email at 5:30 in the morning, if that makes sense. And again, this is not something when I meet a client, I say, you can't call me after 8. I'm not going to do same day showings. It's not as regimented as it appears in this slide, but you just want to set those expectations with your client. And communication is care. Like when you do not communicate, or when you stick your head in the sand and just say, I'll deal with this if it comes up, that is not caring about your client. That's not, even with interactions with other people. I feel like communication is care, and making sure that the person knows where you are on certain areas. That's how we can care for our clients the best. So another important one when we talk about setting expectations, and this is so important, I see agents do this poorly often, and that is to communicate what your expertise is, selling real estate, and what your expertise is not. You're not an attorney. You're not a home inspector. You're not a mortgage lender. Ding, ding, ding. That's the one that I see agents make the biggest mistake or overstep on the most. Our clients, will ask us questions that really their lender should be asked, or their lender should be answering. And instead of saying, that's a great question for your lender, sometimes agents will just start running their mouth. And the thing about our clients, both buyers and sellers, is they never ever forget what we say. If you are not 100% sure about something, you do not need to answer, because our clients are they're like toddlers that you say, we're going to go to the park on Saturday, and that toddler is going to remember that you said you were taking them to the park on Saturday. Our buyers and sellers are going to remember that you said something, a month ago about a lending process, or about, a question that an attorney really should answer. So you need to make sure that you tell them your expertise is selling real estate, helping them buy and sell real estate. But there are going to be lots of other people involved in a transaction, and you need to know when your client asks you a question that is not in your level of expertise, you guide them to the person who can answer that. In my experience, that little tip right there will save you more headache than anything else. Just making sure you answer the things you're qualified to answer and nothing else. Even with my agents, I'm the broker in charge at my office, and even with my agents, they will ask me stuff that I'm not qualified to answer. And they'll tell you that the number one thing I say to them is, you need to ask the closing attorney, or you need to call their lender, or you need to call, the county zoning department. There's just certain things that we're not qualified to answer. So just keep that in mind. And then lastly on this slide is, when it comes to a transaction and working with a client, you want to put your big rocks in first. And what I mean by that is, if you have a mason jar, I just really try to live my life like this. If you have a mason jar and you have a bunch of big rocks and you have a bunch of small rocks, if you put the small rocks in first, your big rocks are not going to fit. But if you put the big rocks in first and then the small rocks will fit around the big rocks. So with real estate, you really have to hone in on the things that are the most important, and put those things first. And then the smaller rocks, the things that are less important, will fit around your big rocks. And that includes, your business, but it also includes your home life things. So, if it's important to you that you are always at your kid's soccer game on a Saturday morning, that's one of your big rocks. So when you are talking to your clients, say Saturday mornings from 10 to 12 are times that I'm never going to be able to do a showing. I've got a soccer game, and that's okay. You just have to communicate that. Time blocking is a great way to make sure you have time to, make sure the big rocks fit before the small rocks. So when we work with our sellers, again, communication, I'm going to say that word like a bazillion times during this, but it's super important to outline the steps of listing a home when you meet with your sellers. So that includes, the things that have to be done before you list it. You're going to get the home professionally photographed. You're going to get the home professionally measured. They need to clear out all their clutter. They need to, all the things that happen pre-listing. And then it's also important to go over with your sellers what showings will look like, how the showing time system works, what is expected of them for a showing, that they're not supposed to be there. Sometimes sellers don't realize that they're not supposed to be there with the showing. And that's something you have to tell them, when there is an appointment that comes in, you need to make sure it's a time that you can be away from the house, a time you can take your pets away, all of that stuff. The easiest way I found to make sure that I communicate everything I want to say is through email. I have a ton of templates where I have drafted, this is what will happen before we list. This is what will go on during listings. This is how showings will work. Once we go under contract, these are the people who will need to make appointments and come into your house, like appraisers, inspectors. And I just have a ton of emails, like blank template emails that I can copy and paste and just like update the terms and update the people's names. But that is how I communicate primarily. I mean, I communicate obviously with people are person to person and over the phone, but emails are great because then a client can go back and look at those things again. It also makes me look like I know what I'm doing. It makes me look like I have sold people's houses before. It makes me look like I have worked with buyers before. And if you're brand new and, maybe you haven't done a lot of business, this is so perfect for you to do, to sit down, create templates, create systems, like save blank emails, drafted emails with, all the things that I'm going to mention. And on the next page, the buyer side, I'm going to tell you about some of the emails I use too. But really, anytime you can automate stuff, it's going to be easier for you. And it's also going to make sure you're not going to leave any boxes unchecked. So with sellers too, you want to make sure you know who the primary contact is for communication. A lot of the times it's both, like the husband and wife, and, you'll have like a three-way group text with the husband and wife and you, but sometimes it's just one of them. And you want to make sure, if I home, who do I ask? Which one is the person who I should contact first if I have a question? So make sure you identify that primary contact. And then in this market, in any market, but in this market, our jobs sometimes look easy to sellers. And I know you've probably run into that where a seller says, oh my gosh, you put my home on the market yesterday and then I have 5 offers. Like that was so easy. It's our job to make it look easy, but I also make sure my clients know that it looks easy because I'm doing all the right things. If I took pictures on my iPhone and put on the MLS, we wouldn't have had 25 showings. We had 25 showings because I used professional photography. I made sure I had a bomb write up on the MLS, like I had, a video tour. I did all the things. I marketed it out. I emailed it everywhere. Like our clients, we don't want to toot our own horn, but we also want to make sure that our clients know all the things we're doing. And the way that I make sure they know all the things that I'm doing to make it look easy is by those emails I send out, where I say, before the house, I'm going to have pictures, measurements, blah, blah, blah. When I first list it, I'm going to send it here. I'm going to mark it here. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. So we just want to make sure our sellers know what we're doing. And the best way to do that is to give them, before it even happens, give them a heads up of this is what this transaction will look like. I think with sellers, the biggest role that we have as far as caring for our sellers is to make sure they know that you have their back, and that your number one goal is getting the deal to the closing table. Sellers are stressed, and I love working with sellers. They're my favorite. I love buyers too for different reasons, but sellers are my favorite. But just like I do, sellers are stressed. They have a lot going on. They have a lot, sometimes this is the first time they've gone through this process, the first time they've sold a home. And sometimes sellers can take things out on you that they normally wouldn't if they were not so stressed. So I just think it's so important, if we care for our clients, to let our sellers know, I have your back, I work for you, I'm doing the best I can. And if we stay calm with them and communicate clearly, that usually comes through, as opposed to getting stressed right back. Like if they're stressed, me being stressed is not going to do anything. So you need to stay calm, communicate, and just move on and not take things personally sometimes with sellers, because sometimes they can not be nice to you, but most of the time they come back around at the end. And if you have all the client care things in place, they definitely will. When we're working with buyers, also, emails are fantastic. Before I show a buyer a single house, I have an email that goes out to them that explains, essentially, it's kind of like the Working with Real Estate brochure, but I've created it in a template that says, what a buyer's agent is, what working with me looks like, the things they need to do before we actually look at houses, which of course is talk to a lender, get pre-approved, sign all of our paperwork. In that email, I explain all the paperwork. So I say, you're going to sign a Working with Real Estate agent brochure before we get started. And this is what that is. You're going to sign a buyer agency agreement before we get started. And this is what that is. You're going to sign the affiliated business disclosure for Lantern. And this is what that is. So I make sure they have all the information about the paperwork, about the process before we even get started. I also make sure that my buyers, if they're not willing to make an offer on the house, we're not going to look at it. And that might sound mean, but I don't play real estate anymore. When I first started, if somebody just wanted to go look at a house because they saw it online and they were kind of interested, but even in my head, I knew they're not going to buy this house, I would go show it to them, because that's just what you do when you get started, or that's what I thought you did. But now I don't play real estate. I sell real estate. So if a buyer is willing to make an offer on a home, we will absolutely go see it. That also means not just make an offer, but make an offer that makes sense. So in this market, if I have a buyer that is not willing to put down due diligence money or a substantial amount of due diligence money, that's a conversation we're going to have. I've had buyers like that before who always want to offer, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 less than the list price, even after it just came on the market, or they want to offer $250 for due diligence money, or they want to ask for $10,000 in closing cost. That's not going to work for me. I'm not going to create a reality where they think that will get them a house. And so when I communicate to them, this is what happens when you are a buyer. This is what happens when it comes to make an offer. You have to offer a price. You have to offer due diligence fee. You have to offer earnest money, due diligence period. I have already explained all of those terms to them in the email that I send. So then when it comes time to actually look at houses, we're all on the same page. A lot of people that I work with are from out of state. I just feel like in my business right now, I'm at a point where I've helped people buy and sell houses, and then they've got relatives moving into North Carolina, or family, friends, whatever. So I just had an offer yesterday with some clients from New Jersey. Well, they had no idea before we worked together about due diligence money, due diligence period, all the different things that are North Carolina specific. And that's something that we need to keep in mind is if you are dealing with people from other states, even if they bought or sold a real estate before, North Carolina has different contract terms. So you want to make sure you go over those things. And again, there's not a set due diligence period. There's not a set earnest money, but you need to set the expectation of if you are a buyer in this market, you have to make a competitive offer. And if you are chronically going to offer under asking price and not put substantial money down and ask, then that is not a serious buyer, in my opinion. And I don't want to work with buyers that are not serious. So a buyer shows me they're serious by getting pre-approved, by making sure they understand the things that I've told them. But you don't have to work with anybody who is not serious. You don't have to work with anybody regardless. You're your own boss, essentially. So you can decide what sellers you want to represent. You can decide what buyers you want to work with. And you can, fire is not the word. You can stop working with someone if you find that you don't work well together. I've done that before. I've had two buyers where I have worked with them. We have had buyer agency agreements signed, and I showed them house after house after house after house. And I discovered after all those houses that they were not going to put an offer in. I would show them exactly what they wanted. They were pre-approved, but I would show them exactly what they wanted, and then they would not want to put in an offer. And this happened, a few times, and I decided this is not good for my business. If I'm wasting time with this buyer who is never going to write an offer, I'm taking away time that I could spend on other clients. I'm taking away time from my family. I'm driving myself crazy. I'm wasting gas money. So it's okay for you to not work with somebody if you find that you don't work well together. And that's something important that you please take that in your brain, that you don't have to work with anybody. You're your own boss, and you want to make sure it's a good relationship so you can properly care for them. Okay, does anybody have any questions, or I'm talking a mile a minute, but does anybody have any stories or comments or questions? Okay. So new construction is hard to add value. It's just a hard place for a realtor to be in a buying and selling situation. We usually we show the house, we do all the work, we write the offer. New construction is a little bit different. I love new construction. I don't know many people who don't love new construction because it seems to be a little bit easier. So when we have clients, we want to make sure that we are caring for them and adding value when they are going through a home builder. So ways that I think we can care for those clients that are building with new construction is you want to make sure, of course, you have good relationship with the sales rep and you communicate with the sales rep and you make sure your buyer knows that you're checking in on the process. You're going to, if they're doing walkthroughs throughout the process, you want to go to those if possible. You, of course, want to go with your clients to the new construction office when they sign the contract and read over the contract and do those things. But another way that I have found that my client, or something that my clients have appreciated in the past, is progress pictures. So sometimes people, new construction, are local, which means they live here and they could drive by the house every day if they wanted to. But I've had several people who are new construction that are moving from out of state or out of the city. And they're not able to drive by all the time and see what is going on. So progress pictures are a great way to add value. Just go by the house, snap a picture, text it to them, say, just wanted you to see what's going on at the house today, or, they put the siding on the outside, or they added the hardwood floors, and I'm not saying this to do this every week. Like, this is not part of your weekly to-do list to drive by someone's house and take pictures, but, every few weeks or every month, drive by the house, snap a picture, text it to them, and it just shows your buyer that you care about them and that you are not only thinking about their transaction when you have to, but you are on top of this transaction and you're thinking about it as just part of your everyday agent care. That's how you're caring for them, is to passing along some information. So difficult situations, we've kind of talked more about precursor things to problems, but now let's talk about ways we can care for our clients when there are difficult clients or difficult situations. So as an agent, you want to be the problem solver, not the problem maker. And this is so important because, like I mentioned about sellers get stressed very easily. Buyers also get stressed very easily. And then if you have a transaction, which I do this a lot, where you're selling someone's home and you're helping them buy a home and you're under contract on both properties at the same time, everybody's stressed in that situation. But you really have to put your problem solving hat on. And when there is an issue that comes up, you need to be calm, you need to communicate, and you need to think of solutions before you loop in your client. And by that, I mean, if a lender calls you and says, we've got a problem, the appraisal came in low, this, that, or the other, I'm not going to get on the phone and call my client and say, oh my gosh, we're doomed. The appraisal came in low. I don't know what we're going to do. I might feel that way, but I'm not going to pass on that stress to them. I am going to get a list of, this is how we could move forward. These are our options. I've already talked to the listing agent. I'm going to have a plan before I loop in my client. And I'm going to create some solutions, hopefully. So when I talk to them, it's not a situation of, I have no idea what we're going to do. It's a situation where, here are our choices moving forward. Let's figure it out together. I do think that if you stay on top of things in a transaction, that's the number one way to avoid issues. I know probably all of us have, in a transaction, we said, well, that probably won't happen, or you have a feeling in your gut that that might be an issue down the road, but you just kind of sit on it or ignore it, put your head in the sand like the ostrich. Those are the times where it's going to come back out. Issues don't go away. If we are on top of things, that's the number one way to avoid issues. I also, again, my clients, they are sick of communication for me probably by the end, but I go over worst case scenarios with them sometimes. I say, we go into contract on this house and, there could be mold in the crawl space. There could be all these things. The seller doesn't have to address them. If that happens, we would decide how to move forward. If you back out for any reason, if it doesn't appraise, yada, 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 you're going to lose your due diligence money. Like, you have to kind of do worst case scenarios with people sometimes. And then if that situation comes up, it's not brand new to them. So on the seller side, if we go under contract at a price that is way higher than what I think the house is worth, or way higher than the list price, I'm gonna 100% of the time have that conversation with my seller that says, this house might not appraise. And even if your buyer submits, I'm not a fan personally of the appraisal waivers or the appraisal addendums, just because they're not, you can't hold any weight to those. So if I'm a listing agent and a buyer submits an offer $50,000 over list price, and they submit an appraisal addendum that says we're going to pay that, well, that doesn't really mean anything. They still could change their mind. If it doesn't appraise, they still could back out of the contract. So I make sure I tell my sellers, it's one thing to live in the what if, like a buyer says, oh yeah, if it doesn't appraise, absolutely, I'm going to make up the difference. But then when they are faced with that decision right in front of them, things could change. And so I tell my sellers, if we go under contract, hopefully there's not going to be any issues. Like, I'm going to do what I can to make sure the appraiser knows the value. And the buyer said they would make up the difference, but you need to know that that's not a guaranteed thing. They could back away if it doesn't appraise and you don't lower, and yada, yada, yada. So with sellers, I definitely go over worst case scenarios more than I do with buyers. But then, if those things happen, we've had those conversations before. So creating a positive relationship with the agent on the other side of the transaction is a way we can definitely care for our clients and care for ourselves. I know we have all worked with agents that are rude and, not helpful and not communicative, but hopefully you've worked with agents who are on the other side of that, super on top of it, super communicative, who are pleasant, who, like I said a minute ago, are problem solvers, not problem makers. And so it's a great thing to tell a client, the one I just talked about yesterday from New Jersey. I had worked with the listing agent before, and she was phenomenal, and we just had a great transaction together. And so when I was able to submit this offer and know that I had worked with her before, she liked me, I liked her, I was able to tell my client, this is a great agent, listing agent, she's honest, I've worked with her before, she's a problem solver, and that gave me a leg up. Like, that gave me something to say to my client as a way to say, this transaction, even if things pop up and there are issues, I know that the agent on the other end of this is not going to add stress. I know that the agent on the other end of this is not going to be rude, that they're going to try to get everyone to the closing table. So I think that's super powerful to remember also. And then, like I said earlier, if there are too many red flags with a client, now, obviously, if you are a listing agent and you are under contract, you're going to have to ride that out. You're under contract, or with a buyer, you're under contract, you've got to get to the closing table. But if you are working with a buyer and, you haven't written an offer yet, or you haven't had an offer accepted yet, and you see too many red flags, it is absolutely okay to end your working relationship. And again, you're not going to say, forget you and never answer the phone again, but you're going to have that conversation and say, since we've been working together, I noticed these are things that are important to you, or these are the things that you require. And unfortunately, that's just not a service I'm able to provide, or unfortunately, that's not the way I run my business. So you absolutely can back out of working with clients. And that is in my opinion, the biggest way you can care for that client is by being honest with them. Or if they are doing things like red flag things, you could have a conversation with them. Like if they want to submit an offer over and over again with $200 due diligence period or due diligence money, it is caring for that client to make sure they know the expectation, and to know that if they want to have a competitive offer, which results in them getting a contract, they have to bring more money to the table, or they have to have different terms. And so if I just say, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, to my client and say, check, 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 I'll write what you want. But then to my friend at the office, I'm saying, what a moron. They are so dumb. They don't understand how the contract works. They don't understand what sellers expect. Well, like they don't understand because I haven't told them. If I had had those conversations with them and I had set expectations, then they would understand. Often in life with our clients and with personal relationships, I feel like we run into issues simply because we don't communicate. And with our clients, sometimes that can lead to a place where you end things on a negative note, or you don't have trust for one another, and those things can 100% of the time be corrected or not happen in the first place if you just communicate clearly. And so lastly, difficult clients can take away from your business, your personal life, and your peace of mind. There's no amount of money or no amount of commission money that's worth you losing your mind over, or you having issues with your family, or losing other clients because one client's driving you crazy. Like, you've got to know that in your head. And again, I know that's easier said than done, and it's taken me a while to get there, but you don't have to run yourself ragged because of one client. And if you set them free, then usually your business, definitely your personal life, but usually your business will grow because you have more energy and time to devote to the things that actually matter. Okay, so then lastly, after a transaction, I think it's so important. This is, care that is fun. So we've been talking about all the things, how we care for our clients and set expectations and communicate, but these are the fun parts of client care, in my opinion. So I think it's important to have a referral program. And by that, I simply mean if anyone sends you a name, a number, a contact, and says, my friend at work was thinking about selling their house, so I gave her your card, or here's their information, I am always going to write that person a handwritten note and give them like a $25 gift card to Starbucks or Chick-fil-A or Target or wherever, wherever I know they like. So that person might not turn into a referral. They might say, I gave your business card to my friend at work, or here's their information. There's a good chance that that might not turn into anything. But what I do know is then when that person who referred me gets a handwritten thank you card in the mail with just like a little gift card or, any little thing, they're going to think of me in the future. Like, one of the times they refer me, it will turn into something. And simple things like that let our clients know that we appreciate them, and that our business really depends on them referring us out. Also, if I've had a transaction that's a nightmare, that person's probably not going to refer me to their friend at work or to their neighbor. We want to make sure we end a transaction very positively, so they have a good taste in their mouths of us and they want to refer us out. And again, you don't even have to do a gift card. Like, you could just do a handwritten note, or like a $5 Starbucks gift card with that handwritten note. Just say, here's a cup of coffee on me. Thank you for giving my information out. I appreciate it. I couldn't do this business without you. Like, something as simple as that will make that person feel appreciated. I love when I get a card in the mail. It's like the best part of my day, because all we get in the mail is ads and like coupons and then bills. Like, we don't ever get anything fun in the mail. So if someone's going to write me a card, it just makes me feel very special. So I make sure I do that for my clients. And then personal newsletters are also a good way to care for our clients, stay in touch. I don't do this anymore, but I used to send out monthly newsletters every month just to my like past clients and my sphere of influence. And in that newsletter, it would just have like the market statistics for different counties. It would have usually a recipe. It would have like any events that were coming up, and then, you know, maybe like spring cleaning tips or a clean out your car cheat sheet, you know, just like little things that I would find on Pinterest or on the web. And it was just a way to stay in touch with my clients. And they knew that every month I was thinking about them by sending that newsletter. Client appreciation events are always a fun way to care for our clients. This is a picture of one that I did a few years ago. I used to always do a fall event and an Easter event. And the Easter event, we would have the Easter bunny come, we would have Easter eggs, and it just naturally, my business tends to be families just because I have 2 kids that, you know, and all my friends have children, and it just seems like the stage of life that I'm in, I have a lot of family clients. And so this was perfect because they could bring their kids. We would have cotton candy. We would have Easter egg hunt. The Easter bunny would be there for pictures. And it's just a way to say thank you for being my client. Thank you for, you know, trusting me with the biggest transaction of your life. And then hopefully, you know, you'll use me again in the future. Most people don't just buy a house and that's the house for the rest of their life. Most people move several times. So we want that repeat business. There's nothing better than selling someone's house that you help them buy. I think that's one of the sweetest parts about real estate, and I just love that feeling. So we want to make sure our clients don't, you know, if we sell them a house and in 5 years, we don't want them to say, who helped us buy our house again? Like, what realtor did we use? We want them to know who we are, we've stayed in touch, and they're going to use us again. And then lastly, a good way to care for your clients, and this is one of my favorite things, is just little drop-by gifts. So like summer's coming up. I've done this before. I think National Watermelon Day is like August. I don't know, it's the beginning of August, like August 4th, 5th, 6th, something like that. So one year on National Watermelon Day, I took all of my clients for that past year a watermelon, and I like made a little sticker to put on the watermelon, said thank you for your business, or you're one in a melon, like one of those little cute things you can say. And I just dropped it off at their house. Some people were home and I got to chit chat for a minute. Some people weren't, and I left them on the front porch. I've done it with pumpkins in the fall. I've done it with a lottery ticket at St. Patrick's Day, you know, just different things. And I don't do it for every client I've ever had, because that would be like you'd be driving all over America. But I usually just do it for the clients of the past year. So every seller or buyer that I've had that still lives locally, just, you know, spend an afternoon of driving by. And it's always so fun because it gives you the warm and fuzzies, or it gives me the warm and fuzzies about why I love to do what I do. Because then I go by and see the house that I helped them buy, and, you know, they've built a swing set in the backyard, or they've got the landscaping done, and it just gives me the warm and fuzzies. And so honestly, it's almost as much for me as it is for my clients, because I just really remember the reason that I like real estate. So drop-by gifts are a great thing to incorporate to care for your clients. And you could just do a little at a time. If you wanted to do all your clients you've ever had, you could say, you know, in the winter, I'm going to do 10 clients and I'm going to take them this. And in the spring, I'm going to do 10 clients and I'm going to take them this. Like, you don't have to do everybody all at one time, but it really means a lot to the people who walk out and see a watermelon on their door and see that I've dropped it off to them. You know, like, it means a lot to them. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to take a picture of that watermelon, put it on Facebook and say, oh my goodness, my realtor's so sweet. Like, they just brought me a watermelon. And so then all of their clients or all of their friends on social media might see that, which again is not why I do it. I truly do it because I just like loving on people in that way. I think when you do that 5 love language thing. Mine is gift giving. I'm a gift giver, love language. And so that in turn means I like to give things to people. But it can get you business in the future. When our clients know they're cared about and that we have done our best for them, they are going to refer you out. And there honestly is no easier way to grow your business than referrals. That is exactly what you want. You don't want to cold call people from, realtor.com or have all these things. Like, you want people to refer you out and grow your business that way. And if we care for our clients and make sure that the transaction goes smoothly and we've done our best, then they're going to refer you out. Why wouldn't they? And then in turn, you're going to get lots more business. So does anybody have any stories to tell of a way that they've cared for their client or a question about anything? Lastly, and I said this before, but I do think you should spend, if you have downtime in your schedule, spend a day every day for a week and get some systems in place. Do some drafts of emails, like one where you explain the paperwork, one where you explain what will happen when they list their home for showings, one where you talk about, the things that need to be done on a buyer's end before you look at houses. Like, just sit down, type up some draft emails and save them, and your life will be so much easier when you have those clients. When you might not have any clients right now. So if you don't have any clients, that's the perfect time to get those systems in place. And then when you do have clients, everything's automated. You know that you haven't left anything out. Like, I remember one time an agent was telling a story about earnest money, and they had not communicated that the earnest money would not be refunded to the buyer if they backed out after the due diligence period. So the agent I was talking with was the buyer's agent, and the buyer decided to terminate the contract after the due diligence period. Well, the buyer had no idea that they were not going to get that second earnest money deposit back. They thought that they were going to get that back no matter when they backed out. And that's the agent's fault. Their agent should have explained how everything works. And if our clients don't know something, it's our fault. And clients sometimes will pretend they don't know things, but when I can go back and say, this was in the email that I sent you that explained the contract, or this was in the email that I sent you that went over how XYZ works, that they can't say they didn't know that at that point, because I've covered my bases and I've made sure to communicate everything that's important, offer-wise, paperwork-wise, contract-wise, closing-wise, all of the things. And so I just encourage you, if you have downtime, to get some systems in place, some emails, drafts created, and your business will really thrive because of those things. Okay. You have any questions or detail? No stories? Okay. Well, let me look at my chat. A couple people. I was sharing my screen. I did not see. So sharing my templates. I don't know that I'm going to share all of my templates. I have sent out to people before my buyer and seller contract to close email. So when I go under contract, I do have a contract to close email that just goes over, everything that's going to happen for a seller under contract and everything that's going to happen for a buyer under contract. Those I have absolutely no problem sharing out, just because I have sent those out to people before. I don't know that I'm going to share out all of my emails templates with everybody, but I could create a guide of everything you need to communicate. So I would give you an outline of what your emails need to look like, and then you can go in, because again, too, if it's as simple as I share it and you copy and paste it, I want you to make sure you know what's in your emails. And if you know what's in your emails, you can properly communicate those things to your clients. But if you just take mine, it's not as effective when we think about making sure we're knowledgeable and creating that care. But I will absolutely send an outline to everybody of what you should include and what I include in my reaching out emails. Let me go in and see who's here. Let me get the guest list for the Zoom, and then I will email that out to everybody. Does anybody else have any more questions or stories? Nobody wants to tell a story?
I don't really
Okay.
I don't really have an exact story, but I just got my buyers under contract for a home purchase price of $375 with 1,000 due diligence, 500 earnest. So
Well, that's great.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, because there for a while it was like the Wild West with due diligence money and earnest money. It was rough there for a little bit. So that is very encouraging.
Yeah,
if things might be a little like they used to be, that would be wonderful news for everybody.
Yeah, I can't tell you that's what I'm seeing come through in compliance, but that's what I managed to get.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh my goodness, that is wonderful news.
Yes.
Oh goodness. All right. Well, thank y'all all so much. Oh, I took exactly an hour. It's 12:01. So thank you so much for everybody who tuned in. And I will get a guideline of the things I think that every agent should have as far as communication, and send it out to everybody. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But I appreciate you guys coming, and hopefully everyone will stay cool today in this 90-degree weather. But I will see you next class. Thank you so much.
As always, thank you, Sarah. Fantastic.
Thank you.